Hi, good afternoon. Today we are going to talk about the community resilience, tools, gaps, and challenges on it. And today we have Professor Ignacio Ngoma from Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences and the senior lecturer from Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, Witness Culture. So we are going to discuss about the DRR and the gaps, challenges, mainly focusing on the African country, Malawi. So both of the academicians will share their experience and the feelings and also the experience of working with the University of Bristol group. I am Rishi Parazuli from University of Bristol, and I have my colleague, Senior Research Associate, Dr. Maria Santo. Let's start with the Professor Ignacio and Witness. Can you please tell a little bit about yourself? So the introduction from your side, please.
Thank you very much, Rishi. I'm indeed with the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. Those who may not be very familiar with the name, it is formerly University of Malawi, the Polytechnic. So we have a new university now. Basically with the University of Bristol, we have been working on this project, Safe Prepared, and I have been team leader. We started corresponding with University of Bristol way back in 2017 on other projects, but on this one, we are working to try to look at the structural projects of school buildings and also community resilience. Thank you very much. Witness.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, I'm Witness Culture, one of the members who was part of this assignment. I've been involved since 1.5 years ago, and I've been the focal point when it comes to community engagement. So I can say that I've been part of the project, I've seen it, and I'm able to articulate some of the challenges and the gaps that are associated with this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, both. Here, yeah, you are both from the university and you are engaging in teaching and also the research projects. So you are also closely being on the government initiatives and so on DRR. So in your opinion and experience, what are the main challenges of disaster risk reduction in mainly focusing on your country?
The main challenges with disaster risk reduction is that the strategies and programs sometimes are brought in haphazardly. I know that the disaster management affairs has tried to work through these issues. But what happens is that it's only when the disaster has happened, then they start looking at interventions. After the disaster has taken place, there's a lot of pomp, including the president and others coming to the picture. But once it has died, it appears that everyone forgets about the issue. So I think that's one of the main challenges I find. The state communities, in most cases, are not taken to be part of the solution. So it's like we have decided things and we take it to them. So uptake in most cases is quite a challenge. Witness, you can pick it up.
Yeah, that's very true. As the word depicts disaster, usually disaster, you don't plan for it. And what happens always as a challenge is we have had disasters here in Malawi, but to coordinate, to plan, even to come out of the disaster after the disaster has happened, it has been a problem. So just to add on what Prof. Ngoma has said, it's true, even the communities themselves, while they have experienced disaster for several years, but you find that they have the same problems. They have the same disasters, for example, flooding. They will experience it. Next year, they will have the same disaster, but they're not coming out of it. So it has been a challenge in terms of how do we come out of the disaster if the disaster has happened. So engagement, coordination, especially after the disaster is a problem.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very, very well pointed out. And yeah, you mentioned about the government agency that is looking after the disaster, mainly the disaster events. So do you think that the government and non-governmental agencies are addressing DRR appropriately? Are there any gaps or they are lacking of?
Of course, there are gaps. I said above, if you look at in Malawi, the districts where major disasters have taken place. I remember one time I'd gone to the Lower Shire, Chikwawa district, and we're looking at the number of non-government organizations. We're numbering over 50. I say, all of these, what are they doing here? Is it that they are doing things for themselves as NGOs, or they are doing it for the beneficial institutions? Because what we found is that in most cases, even if you look at flooding, you find that we do have gauges which are supposed to indicate to the community that if the levels reach this level, they should be warned to try to move away. But what we found that those gadgets and the tools were damaged and they were not repaired. But you could see that there are a lot of these NGOs, over 50. So if they put resources together, I think they can do quite more. On the side of government, you find that sometimes they would call for meetings when the disaster has actually happened. But what would be appropriate would be whereby they have a strategic arrangement whereby they know that, for example, if it's a disasters like flooding, we know that they will come during the rain, when the rains are just on the onset of rain, they should be able to organize the activities which will sensitize the communities. If it's like the earthquakes, as you will know, they're unpredictable. But it would be possible to ensure that the communities are aware of these eventualities, and therefore, through public awareness, to make sure that the communities are mindful of these things, and therefore to be prepared for some tools that can awaken the communities, because as government, they have a lot of things on their mind. So for these things, in most cases, they forget about them until they happen. I think I can pick it on from their witness.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah, we have prone areas to disasters in Malawi, whereby usually each and every year, for an example, flooding, each and every year we have floods in other areas in Malawi. And the community, they are aware about, the communities within those areas, they are aware about the problems they have during the, flooding. The government agency, we have a fully-fledged government agency that deals with disasters. We have NGOs that promote disaster risk, reduction. But the question is, when and how can we make sure that at least the disaster risk reduction is being done by all of these agencies, the community, the government, and the NGOs. Usually what happens is after the disaster, do we go back in terms of monitoring and evaluation and have at least an answer to our questions? What are the problems? How can we mitigate them? What are the risks, and so on and so forth? So that at the end of the day, we should not just be waiting for the disaster to occur. Then we come in as agencies, as NGOs. Yes, we are doing something, but we are not proactive. So my line of thinking is, yes, the government and governmental agencies, they are addressing the DRR, but maybe we are leaving some gaps when it comes to aftermath of the disasters. So that maybe when we engage the communities during during the disasters and after the disasters, and see, working together with the communities, what can we do so that we can minimize or we can mitigate the risks associated with the disasters. So the monitoring and evaluation after the disasters is very important as well for the communities and even for the government and the non-government organizations. But to some extent, yes, the government and the NGOs, they are trying to address the DRR, but we need to do more.
Yeah, okay. Thank you both. Yeah, just highlighting all the points. And so the approaches from your points, that the approaches they are taking from the government and non-governmental agencies, those are not that impactful, and the community engagement itself is not well coordinated. That what I can understand as of now. So in general, so are these gaps and challenges are trying to deal with the academia? You mean from the research perspective, research activities, are engaging the multi-stakeholders of the disaster risk reduction, like community, governmental agencies, and universities? What are the practices, and what are the those research activities are going on, focusing on these gaps to fill the gaps? Mainly we can focus on the research activities that academic institutions are going to are planning or are doing in coordination with the government agencies and the communities.
Yeah, of course, as you have rightly put it, we had indicated that in terms of the impactness of these approaches, maybe we are saying that it's not as impactful, but there is an activity taking place which is quite good. And also that we said that there are these gaps which exist, particularly ownership of the approaches that are being done. And so it would be important, as was also highlighted by witness, that the government needs to have, because we know that the government has got their eyes throughout the country through district commissioners in districts. And so these ones could be able to have periodically, maybe quarterly or shorter period, some public hearing. We know that the general have these public rallies. So if they were put as part of their message when they have these things, look at particularly those tools we talked about, the damage of those is going to affect them when such things happen. It would actually help them. But also we know that government has at every level people who can help them. So like artisans, if these are trained, that when people are being engaging them, they should be able to also tell their clients, who are the people developing maybe houses or whatever, that if you don't take these into account, you may have some challenges. As research activities being part of the academia world, it is true that current activities, I think from our interaction with the University of Bristol, it is coming out clearly that the lessons have been learned by this academia, and the research that I think we are doing currently under SAFER Prepared is actually addressing some of those things, because the all levels. So the research activity has stratified who the community is and what role they play, so that at the end of the day, we see the academia coming in with better strategies to ensure that at the end of the day, the communities can be able to benefit. Over to you, witness.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as Prof has said, Prof Ngoma, yes, the approaches to some extent, they are having an impact on the reduction of risks due to disasters. However, knowing that for something to be impactful, as I said from the beginning, that there is need for indeed a very rigorous association amongst the players, coordination among the players, because for something to be impactful, I'm looking at there are issues to do with technical issues. The disaster has happened, why it has happened. Of course, it has affected people. It has affected even the infrastructure. So there are technical issues that are supposed to be done by technical people. Institutional issues, Prof. Ngoma has talked about the district commissioners. In terms of our institutions, do we have the capacity that can make sure that at least the approaches, they are very impactful, very important? Social issues, the community engagement. The communities, do they know how to make sure that at least the disasters or the approaches that we are following, they are having an impact on themselves and even the locality? Very important again on that one. So the coordination amongst all the members involved, all the players involved, which is very, very important. And this brings me to the research issues. In terms of research, of course, some people have gone to do research, maybe some of the universities, including what we are talking about here, MUBAS and Bristol University, is part of that research, initiative. But for it to be more impactful, very important, we need to indeed look at the gaps, the challenges, so that we should come up with areas to do research, more research on, because indeed we have seen that, yes, we have been talking about disasters, but why are we having the same problems time and again? Our experience with the community assessment that we had in Malawi, it has shown indeed that there are some gaps in terms of knowledge by the communities. Do they know what happens when a disaster occurs, or what initiates a disaster to occur? What can they do for them to at least mitigate the risks associated with the disasters? So from our experience, we have seen that indeed there are some gaps, to the extent that even when we are involving these communities, some of them, they were able to say, oh, now we understand why this happens in this way. Or if this happens, if we can do it in one way or the other. Meaning that if we engage them time and again through either research or other modes of engagement, I think to some extent we should be able to mitigate or reduce some of the risks associated with the disasters. So in terms of research, yes, few research have been done, very few in terms of disasters. And it's important maybe to take it from there, as Prof. I said, that maybe we need to be proactive to do more research associated with disasters. Thank you.
Yeah, Maria, I think you can go. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Goma and Dr. Kocho, for so far for your insightful information about disaster risk management in Malawi. Since you mentioned how the government reacts and how the academia reacts, I would like to kindly ask you to move on to the community. In what sense? You were the ones who went to the schools and also to examine the buildings affected either by earthquakes or other natural hazards. And also you met with local community members. And that's why I want you to give us some insight about how the community and its members, who in a way are the community, can enhance their resilience towards uncertain, about how the self-assessment tool that you were the one who initiated it in the communities can be effective at the community level. We work closely together, both the University of Bristol and the Malawi University of Bristol and of Business and Applied Science, in order to use this application. So can you please provide us, and also to the people who watch us on the internet, how this self-assessment tool can be effective at the community level? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. Indeed, we had an opportunity through this project to visit the communities. The assessment tool that was available, which was declared, it was an app. But were two actual stages that took place. The first one, we had to use the questionnaire forms that were printed. And so the questionnaire forms that were printed were administered to communities. We had a chance to meet the school administration, so school management committee. So most schools have got a management committee, which is headed by the local community. And then in that one, we had actually the school committee chairperson and another member. We also, the community itself, through parents, so at least 3 parents, we were involved. Actually, there were 5 parents, and then we had also the administration of the school itself, so the teachers. So the head teacher and the 2 teachers, and of course the learners themselves, the students or pupils. So we had quite a nice experience in that when we were using the paper form, you could see that some of the community, particularly parents, they were not very, I would say, legible, so they will not be able to fill the forms. So they will work as a team. But also remember that at the same time we had this pandemic, the COVID-19. So it was like we have to administer COVID prevention measures and ensure that at least there's minimum contact between the individuals. So it was quite an interesting experience. But at the end of the day, what we found is that there were different perceptions. The learners, they are actually actively learning. And so they found that some of the things that they were being introduced to or informed, they had learned in class, some of them, and but they did not relate them to be like they are part of their day-to-day life. Okay, so that opened them up, as was mentioned earlier, by witness that for the parents, see, like the issue of how do learners come to a school, for example, particularly those primary school, because we had the secondary school and the primary school. Okay, they walk to school every day. So the routes they take, the issues like if you have a storm, how they respond, if there is flooding, how they respond. Okay, one of the interesting which we found was that if we were looking at, of course, if there is an event of a fire, for example, we found that all the schools did not have, apart from the entry, if the fire was taking place to that entry, then there would be a problem because there was no exit. So it was quite an interesting experience. But ultimately, what I would say that the communities with this engagement, they were very informed, because schools were saying, do they have drills, for example? So we found that the head teachers, the community were saying, this is new, because although we learned about drills when themselves were learning in their technical teacher training schools, but they would not implement them. So they say, this one is like a thing that we should be doing. So they were learning things that they could benefit from. So that was on the paper format of the questionnaire. But when we went the second round, we're using now both paper as well as the mobile app. And the mobile app was very interesting in that, see, it was easy. Most of the phones, it was easy to upload the software. And so those who have a phone which has got that capacity or capability, you can use the phone. So they would be able to do that quite easily. So it was a very, very interesting experience. But of course, as you asked, in terms of the impact of this visit, it was very impactful, because Malawi has currently districts, 28 districts. We're able to visit 27. The other district is actually an island on Lake Malawi, so we didn't have mobility at the time. But maybe we'll visit one day, and they also administer the questionnaire, so that we also have a feel of what they do in that island. I think at this point, I'll ask witness to come in.
Thank you, Prof. I'll come in briefly, because you have articulated much of what I was even supposed to say. I would sum it up to say, yes, indeed, it was a mixed bag. Excuse me. In the sense that the teachers, the students, in terms of responding to the questionnaire, it was very easy for them. They were able to understand, as Ignacio has put it, that some of the issues they have been learning in a class, only that during this time they were reminded about these issues. However, the experience was now different from the parents, some of the parents, and maybe some of the school committee members, because us as the ones who were administering the questionnaires, they were even coming to us time and again to find out, what do you mean by this? Oh yes, this is a disaster, but what do you mean by, A, B, C, D, E? Whereby the students and the teachers, it was easy, they could finish, responding to the questionnaire without problems. But to some extent, we had problems with the parents and some of the school members, maybe because of the knowledge gap. So maybe as a way forward, we should know maybe how to engage these other groups. Because, say for example, responding to this questionnaire, it was very important for the respondents to respond coming out of themselves. That maybe some of the parents would go to the teacher, so that the teacher should be able to tell her or him to say, okay, you can respond it in this way or the other way. So we had, those differences. The teachers and the students, they were able to respond without problems, but with the parents, to some extent, we had problems. We had to school them first, tell them what to do, and so on and so forth. Even when it came to using the app, with the teachers, very easy, straightforward, but with the parents, they couldn't manage because of the knowledge gap. So I think it's where maybe I would put it in a nutshell. Indeed, the experience was that it was nice, it was okay, but with certain groups. With the other groups, we had to come in, assist wherever. and possible. Yeah, sure.
Maybe just to add on what the witness has said, that we also had to administer the consent forms. So the consent forms was another experience, because we know that the ethical issues are a part of the developed world issues. But what we found is that as an experience was that for the people in this part of the world, they found that one to be something that was just extra. They didn't feel that it was necessary in what we observed with witness. That's why I should mention that one regarding the issue of the consent forms, which was part of what we administered to all the participants that we will engage in this particular study or project.
Before moving to my next question, Professor Goma and Dr. Kocha, you just offered us a very nice overview of what went on in the community when they filled the questionnaires in writing, or when they used the app. And this is both interesting in terms of social impact. So I would like to have your brief before we move to the next question. Since both you are researchers and scholars, but you examine things from the structural aspect, both hazards and also structures. But how can you offer us a comment about the use of the questionnaire, both as a tool and in writing, as a learning tool, as you said, because this was a learning process? What did you think as engineers, but also as people who live in the Malawian society? I mean, do you think that this kind of activities in the future could be let's say implemented in the school curriculum in order for young people or children or parents to enhance their awareness in terms of natural hazards education? I mean, could you, as engineers who stand in the front line of disaster risk management, liaise with other government or other kinds of organizations so that people may use this kind of tools as a learning process?
Thank you, Maria. It's very important, the question you have raised. In the school curriculum, there is what they call life skills. So I believe that it is easier to incorporate some of the things that were done or are being done in this activity as part of life skills, because the life skills, the learners are taught how to probably survive under difficult circumstances. And so this could be one of them. Also, learners do have extracurricular activities like sports. So I think as part of their entertainment, one could have these ones. They also have plays like drum. So those activities, if these are built into those or incorporated, they can enrich their awareness of the environment, at the same time benefit the nation greatly. For the communities, which we discussed, there are a lot of now local village communities, they call VDC, okay, village development committees, and all those. So all those are avenues whereby if a proper tool or arrangement is made, all these can be built as part of their day-to-day life, trying to make it a live lessons for them. A witness.
Yeah, that's very, very true. From the questions, from the questionnaire, very informative. Of course, one of the experiences was that the communities, in this case, the respondents to the questionnaire, including the head teacher, they were able to at least isolate some of the questions that they would say, oh, I think this one, I think maybe we are doing it in a wrong way. We need it to do this way. Or if we include this one in our, as Prof. Ngoma is saying, in skills, skills program, I think it will help. So yes, the questions from the questionnaire, to some extent, if some are isolated maybe, and maybe use the normal processes so that maybe they can be included in the lessons, right? But at the same time, see to it that apart from the lessons, which is maybe in schools, but what about the community at large? As I said, that some of the parents, maybe they have a gap in terms of knowledge. How can we reach them? Apart from the lessons within the schools, but we can have a way as well through the normal processes, through the local government and so on and so forth, to see to what extent can we, make sure that at least this knowledge from the questions, maybe the communities, they benefit as well. We can find the ways how to, make sure that the communities, they're engaged as well, based on the questionnaires that we had from the questionnaire, the questions from the questionnaire, yes. But indeed, they can benefit a lot because they demonstrated, the respondents, to some extent, they demonstrated when they read the questions, they said, oh yeah, I think now we have learned. Maybe we are doing it this way. Maybe if we do it in this way. We had those experiences.
That's great. Thank you very much. So let's now, in a way, widen the scope of the previous question. And I would like to ask you now how the community can enhance their resilience according to your expertise and your views as researchers and scholars towards uncertain risks, and what will be your role as professor and researcher and teaching members of the Malawi University of Business and Applied Science as academics and researchers in order to help them enhance their resilience towards uncertain risks.
Thank you once again, Maria. The issue of how the communities can enhance their ability to overcome the issues that come with disaster. So the disaster risk reduction regime. The communities, as we have discussed, they have a certain structure in which they organize themselves. And so if we are able to take advantage of those structures, it would help a lot, because all you put is that, okay, when they're doing certain activities, you put in one line of what you want them to learn, and they appreciate that this is definitely important for them to inculcate, to be inculcated in them. Now, one of the issues that I think is clear that the communities in Malawi, they build their buildings on their own. They self-finance, and sometimes the challenge is that who are they going to engage to help them achieve that one? They have a little resources. Sometimes they work as a community. They say, okay, I have these resources, and we work as a community to help me do this one. So if we look at those structures, we do have now, Malawi government has put what they call community and technical colleges, where they train artisans. So I think that these artisans, once they are informed of the tools that are available, we've been currently looking at the safer housing guidelines, the safer school construction guidelines. So these, if the artisans are actually trained that this is how they are supposed to build. So if these communities want to build a house or a building, they are going to engage these people, then they can learn from there. In the past, the Malawi government in disaster-prone areas, they tried to build what they call demonstration houses. They mainly visit those ones to say, okay, can we look at this one? So we, as the academia, we work with these institutions because as we're doing this particular community resilient activity, we engage the government structure. So Department of Buildings, Minister of Local Government, Minister of Education, and of course at the district level, the district commissioner's office. So we believe that once everything is done in terms of completion of this, as discussed earlier with the detained and the rich, we should be able to share with the Disaster Management Affairs Office, the Department of Buildings, the Ministry of Education, so that themselves own ownership. We also know that as Malawi we have now for the Ministry of Education, what they call Education Infrastructure Support Unit, which is actually responsible for ensuring that consultants and contractors are properly guided when they are building new structures, but also maintenance. So we believe that as academia, we will continue to engage these institutions to find ways in which we can be also useful, because we also have what we call outreach activities as part of our community, rather obligation to help communities in the country. So I think those would be my first thoughts, then witness can come
in. Thank you, Prof. It's true, as an academia and as researchers, of course, we have an important role to play in terms of research and in terms of maybe community engagement with respect to the integrity of the structures that we build. We need to have structures that are resilient to disasters, and that can only be done if indeed us as academics and as researchers, we take part. As Prof has said, we have technical colleges that we can engage so that maybe we can train some of these artisans. As he put it, that most of the buildings that are constructed in our rural areas, they don't take standards into consideration. And at the end of the day, when we have a disaster, you find that all these buildings that are demolished, even injuring some of the occupants, which is a very big problem. But we can do better by, in making sure that those who build these houses in the rural areas, indeed they build houses that are resilient to disasters. And that can only be done if we train some of these artisans using the technical colleges. We have rural technical colleges that we have as of now. So indeed, as academics and researchers, we will continue making sure that we do research that can enhance the integrity of the structures of the buildings within the rural areas. Yes, we have set up, committees or structures within the communities. So it can be easy for maybe in terms of engagement of the community, it can be easy using these set up structures, as Prof. Ngoma has said, that apart from the structural integrity, but there are other issues to do with social. How can you manage yourselves if the disaster has occurred? Apart from the buildings, but there is need for engagement of the communities using the structures that we have within the communities. So indeed, it can be enhanced so that at the end of the day, the buildings, even the communities, they are resilient to the disasters if they occur. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ignacio and witness. Yeah, I'd just like to add a little bit thing about the tools. So as a part of academic collaboration with the university there in Malawi and the Bristol, that we have developed a tool to assess the structural condition, pre-earthquake and post-earthquake. So that was a part of a product that has been developed during the SAFER project, and it has been implemented as a part of the SAFER Prepared project in Malawi. So we contextualized the tool to assess the structural conditions. So I would like to know a little bit more about the structural assessment from Professor Ignacio, as you are the background from the structural engineering. So can you please highlight some of the uses and the benefit of using those tools in Malawi?
Thank you, Rishi, for that question. The structural survey. Indeed, we have an app that was developed, and it was very useful in that once you are doing the survey itself, you would be able to know where exactly you are, the GPS location. And also, when you take the pictures, they would be loaded immediately, see what you are doing, that it's actually recorded. The issue of taking the measurements of the structure itself, whether it's a house or a school building in this particular case, you would find that there are certain elements that are critical. And you could see that the building elements like the mortar thickness, the masonry units, which are the bricks, the openings in terms of height and the width, and the windows, all those from the academia side, you would see that, okay, this you actually expect. And so when you're doing those surveys, you would be able to tell that, okay, there are these challenges that you face. Now, as we went out, since we visited all the districts and they were picking on every on the primary school, what we found was that for the secondary schools, the infrastructure was excellent in all cases because they were a government. Where we picked a community secondary school, community-based secondary school, would find that in those ones, there would be some additional structures which were seen to be not to the level of those that were found in the, what you call a boarding secondary school. Okay. But generally for the secondary schools, the infrastructure was excellent. There were issues, of course, to do with maybe maintenance of particularly just the day-to-day switch like window panes and others. But generally, it was excellent. For the primary school, that's where we found that most of the structures were difficult to comprehend in terms of their structural integrity. And so as a educational institution, but also involved with the engineering professional bodies, it is apparent that we need to improve. We have suffered sometimes where a school has collapsed due to just the weather during the rain season. You see, because some of the structure were built with mud bricks. And so the roofing itself could also be problematic. It would be leaking. And so the structure would actually collapse. So in terms of now isolating the roof structure, okay, the geometry and the layout. Some of the building in the primary school blocks, it was a challenge, and we need to do something as a country on those ones, because the experience that we have lost some lives due to that. The government does try to fund these ones, but what we found is that in most cases, it will be the communities themselves organizing themselves, contribute resources, and then build the structures. As locals, I've also seen that as parents and of course guardians, we have seen that we have been told, okay, they are building. So we need as a community to contribute the school community development fund. So they would ask you to contribute. But I think what the challenge is in terms of the structure they are building, is that the interventions they put are not right. So when we're doing even the structural survey, would be able to engage the teachers that this tool is important, and the outcome of the survey will be shared with you. Similarly, with the Ministry of Education as the primary one of those infrastructure. But you remember, Rich and Maria, that we also had some meetings with what we call them workshop seminars through Zoom. And what came out was that the organization at the local level, there was some gap. We could see that the district office would say, okay, some of the schools are for us local community. They are not directly reporting to the Ministry of Education. So that one, we feel that it was an issue that needs to be addressed, because the Ministry of Education at the end of the day is responsible for the welfare of the learners. But sometimes the infrastructure can belong to the local administration, which is the district commissioner's office, because at the district level, they have also the Ministry of Education as their representatives. And so those could be issues. But the tool is definitely very, very useful in terms of assessment. And the head teachers, once they have those tools, they can be part and parcel of the response unit. So, okay, we have this disaster here, or this incident. This is what we have seen, and they can, through the feedback system on the app, they can feedback to the system locally, and of course to your colleagues in Bristol. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ignacio. Yeah, actually, the tools that we are talking about is the mobile and web application. That is, and the same tool, we have two different systems. That one is for the structural assessment that we can do a pre-earthquake and the post-earthquake, focusing on the earthquake disaster. And the other one is the self-assessment of community resilience that can be done, focusing on the self-assessment that can be done in the local level by the local community, because no technical expertise is needed for the self-assessment of the community resilience itself. But however, for the structural assessment, you need to have an engineer or someone who has the good knowledge of structural engineering with earthquake engineering. So those are the tools that developed through the SAFER project, and it's expanded to the Malawi through the SAFER Prepared project. So we were talking about those tools and the use and the gaps, that how we can contribute to fill the gaps in between for the DRR and the resilience. Thank you very much, Professor Ignacio and Witness, for your time and very insightful, detailed from your experience and understanding from that part of the world. So it's really nice to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you also from my side, Professor Ngoma and Dr. Kwocha. It was a really nice discussion and very insightful interview.